The rain came down in sheets that October evening, turning Seattle's streets into rivers of reflected neon and streetlight. Maya Chen stood outside the architectural firm where she'd just been laid off, clutching a cardboard box containing 5 years of her professional life. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the shock of suddenly having nothing. She'd seen the signs. The firm was struggling. Projects were being canceled. But she never imagined they'd let her go. Not after she'd sacrificed everything for this job, her relationships, her health, her dreams of starting her own practice. Now, at 32, she felt like she was starting over from nothing. Maya opened her large black umbrella and began walking toward the bus stop, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. The rain was relentless, soaking through her wool coat despite the umbrella's protection. She barely noticed the people hurrying past her, all lost in their own worlds, their own problems. That's when she saw him, a boy, maybe 12 years old, huddled under a broken awning outside a closed convenience store. His clothes were soaked through, thin and full of holes. He had no jacket, no bag, nothing but the tattered shirt and pants that clung to his small frame. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and he was shivering so violently that Maya could see it from across the street. Something in her chest tightened. Despite her own crisis, despite the anger and fear churning inside her, she couldn't look away. The boy's eyes were closed, his arms wrapped around himself in a futile attempt to stay warm. He looked so small, so completely alone. Maya hesitated for only a moment before crossing the street. Her practical mind screamed at her to keep walking. She had her own problems. She needed to figure out how she'd pay rent next month. But her feet carried her forward anyway, guided by something deeper than logic. "Hey," she said softly, approaching the boy. He flinched, eyes flying open with fear. Up close, she could see he was even younger than she'd thought, with hollow cheeks and dark circles under his eyes. "Are you okay?" The boy stared at her warily, saying nothing. He looked ready to run. "I'm not going to hurt you," Maya said gently. "But you're going to catch pneumonia out here. Do you have somewhere to go?" The boy shook his head slowly. His lips were turning blue. Maya looked down at her umbrella, then at the boy, then back at the umbrella. She made a decision that surprised even herself. She closed the umbrella and handed it to him. "Here, take this." The boy's eyes widened. I can't." "Yes, you can. Please, I'm only going to the bus stop around the corner. You need this more than I do." She pressed the umbrella into his cold hands. "What's your name?" "David," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. "I'm Maya." "David, promise me you'll find somewhere warm tonight. A shelter, a church, anywhere." David nodded, clutching the umbrella like it was made of gold. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you so much." Maya reached into her purse and pulled out the $20 she had left until payday. A payday that would never come. She pressed it into David's free hand. "Get something hot to eat, okay?" Before he could respond, before she could change her mind or start crying, Maya turned and hurried toward the bus stop. The rain soaked through her clothes immediately, cold and merciless. She didn't look back. What Maya didn't see was David standing there in the rain, tears mixing with the water on his face, staring after her like she was an angel who had appeared from nowhere. He clutched the umbrella and the $20, feeling something he hadn't felt in the 6 months since his mother had died and he'd ended up on the streets. He felt seen. He felt like he mattered. That night, David did find a shelter. He used the $20 for 3 days' worth of food, and he kept that umbrella, even when other kids on the street tried to steal it. He kept it through the foster homes, through the group homes, through every difficult year that followed. It became his reminder that kindness existed, that someone had cared when they didn't have to. Maya went home to her small apartment that night, stripped off her wet clothes, and cried. She cried for her lost job, for her uncertain future, for all the plans that had crumbled. But somewhere beneath the fear and disappointment, there was a small, warm feeling. She'd helped someone who needed it more than she did. In her darkest moment, she'd chosen compassion over self-pity. The next morning, Maya began rebuilding. She took freelance projects, worked 3 part-time jobs, and slowly, painfully, started to climb back. It took years, but she never forgot the lesson of that rainy night. The worst moments didn't define you. How you treated others in those moments did. David never forgot either. As he grew older, moved through the foster system, and eventually earned a scholarship to college, he carried the memory of that umbrella and the woman who'd given it to him. He studied computer science, worked obsessively, and built a startup from his dorm room that would eventually change the tech industry. The umbrella sat in his apartment, then his first office, then the headquarters of his billion-dollar company. People asked about it sometimes. Why did the CEO of Brooks Tech keep a battered old umbrella on display in his office? He never told them the full story. He just smiled and said it reminded him where he came from and what mattered most. But secretly, for 15 years, David searched for the woman who'd saved him that night. He hired investigators, posted online, did everything he could think of. He knew her first name was Maya, and he remembered her face, but Seattle was a big city, and people moved on. Still, he never stopped looking, because he'd made himself a promise that rainy night, shivering under that umbrella, eating a warm meal for the first time in days. If he ever found her, if he ever got the chance, he would pay back her kindness 1,000 times over. 15 years later, Maya Chen sat in a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle, nursing a cup of tea she could barely afford. At 47, she'd weathered more storms than she could count. After rebuilding her career once, she'd lost everything again when her mother's medical bills had drained every penny she'd saved. Then came her own health crisis, the surgeries, the mountains of debt. She'd fought hard, worked every job she could manage with her limitations, but sometimes the universe just kept pushing you down. Her freelance architectural work had dried up in the recession. Her small apartment was gone. Now she lived in a subsidized room at a women's shelter, trying to figure out her next move. The irony wasn't lost on her. That night, 15 years ago, when she'd given her umbrella to a homeless boy, she'd been afraid of ending up exactly where she was now. And here she was anyway. But she'd do it again. She'd give that umbrella away 100 times over, even knowing what would come. Maya was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the man who'd entered the coffee shop and frozen in place, staring at her. She didn't see the way his hands started shaking or how his eyes filled with tears. She didn't notice him until he was standing right beside her table. "Excuse me," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "I'm sorry to bother you, but is your name Maya?" She looked up, startled. The man was in his late 20s, well-dressed in an expensive suit, with kind eyes and a face that seemed vaguely familiar. "Yes, I'm Maya. Do I know you?" The man pulled out a chair and sat down without asking, as if his legs might give out. "You probably don't remember me. It was 15 years ago, on a rainy night in October. You gave me your umbrella." Maya's breath caught. She studied his face more carefully now, seeing past the polish and success to the boy underneath. "David," she whispered. His face crumpled and tears streamed down his cheeks. He nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he finally found his voice, it was thick with emotion. "I've been looking for you for 15 years. I never gave up. I couldn't." Maya felt her own tears starting. You were looking for me?" "Every single day," David said. "Do you have any idea what you did for me that night? You saved my life, Maya. Not just because of the umbrella or the money, though those helped. You saved my life because you saw me. You treated me like I mattered when the whole world had made me feel invisible." "You were just a child," Maya said softly. "Of course you mattered. I wasn't just anything to most people," David replied. "I was a street kid to avoid, to ignore, to step around. But you stopped. You gave me the only umbrella you had when you were having your own crisis. Yes, I remember. I saw you holding that box from the architectural firm. I knew something was wrong." Maya wiped her eyes. How did you find me?" "I hired investigators. I scoured social media. I posted everywhere. Then, last week, someone from your old firm saw my post and told me you sometimes came to this coffee shop." He paused, looking at her more closely now, seeing the worn clothes, the tired eyes. "Maya, are you okay? Are you struggling?" She wanted to lie, to protect her pride, but something in his face made her tell the truth. "I'm living in a shelter right now. Things have been hard for a long time. Medical bills, recession, bad luck. Just life, I guess." David reached across the table and took her hand. Not anymore. Please, let me help you. Let me pay back what you gave me. David, you don't owe me anything. This isn't about debt, he interrupted. Do you know what I did after that night? I kept your umbrella. I carried it through foster care, through college, through everything. When I started my company, I put it on display in my office. It reminded me every day of what kindness looks like, of what I wanted my company to represent. He pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. There, in a sleek modern office, was her old umbrella mounted in a glass case with a small plaque. The kindness that started everything. Maya stared at the image, overwhelmed. Your company? Brooks Tech. I built it from nothing, just like you helped me believe I could. And now I have more resources than I know what to do with. Please, Maya, let me set things right. He squeezed her hand. I have an idea. My company needs a director of design for our new headquarters. Someone with vision, with heart, with experience. The salary is $200,000 a year, plus benefits, plus a signing bonus that would clear any debts you have. Maya shook her head, new tears falling. David, I can't let you just give me a job. I'm not giving you anything. I'm offering you a position you're qualified for. Your portfolio is brilliant. Yes, I found it. You're exactly what we need. This isn't charity, Maya. This is me recognizing talent and repaying a debt of kindness. He pulled out a card and handed it to her. Will you at least think about it? Maya looked at the card, then at David's earnest face, and finally at the photo of her umbrella on his phone. She thought about that rainy night 15 years ago, how she'd felt when she'd made the choice to help him. She'd been afraid and hurting, but she'd chosen compassion anyway. And now, here was that compassion returning to her, multiplied beyond anything she could have imagined. You really kept the umbrella all these years? She asked softly. Every single day. It taught me that what we do for others matters, even when we can't see the impact. You couldn't have known what that night would mean to me, but you helped anyway. David smiled through his tears. Now it's my turn. Please let me help you, not because you need it, but because kindness deserves to be repaid. Because you matter, Maya. You've always mattered. Maya looked at the young man before her, seeing the scared, shivering boy he'd once been and the strong, successful man he'd become. She thought about giving and receiving, about pride and grace, about the mysterious way kindness echoed through time. Finally, she smiled. Okay, I'll think about it. But David, thank you. Not for the job offer, but for remembering. For still being the kind of person who cares. I learned from the best, he said, returning her smile. So can I buy you dinner? A real one, at a real restaurant? We have 15 years to catch up on. As they left the coffee shop together, neither of them noticed the light rain that had begun to fall. But if they had, they might have smiled at the perfect poetry of it all. 2 lives, transformed by kindness, reuniting under the same gray Seattle sky where their story had begun. The umbrella, David thought, had finally come home.